Tonight, we continue our quiet walk into the hidden spaces of the heart, not to search for answers, but to soften the questions themselves. Some questions do not need to be solved. They need to be felt and gently released. What is the meaning of a life that is already breathing, already unfolding, already complete? The world often whispers that meaning must be earned, built, collected, or proven. Yet the old teachings tell us something far simpler. Meaning is not ahead of you. It is beneath your feet, within your breath, inside the silence between thoughts. As you listen now, allow your body to rest more deeply. Let your shoulders fall. Let your jaw soften. Let the weight of the day dissolve like mist under morning light. There is nothing you need to achieve in this moment. There is nowhere you need to go. Long ago, in a quiet town surrounded by mountains, there lived a man named Haru. He was known as diligent, respected, and capable. His hands were always busy. His mind was always planning. His days were filled with movement and purpose. Yet when night arrived and the world grew still, a subtle feeling visited him. Not pain, not sadness, but a quiet sense of something missing. It was like hearing a distant sound whose source could not be found. One evening, unable to rest, Haru walked beyond the village, following a narrow path that led toward the forest. The air was cool. The moon hung low, pale and calm. Bamboo leaves swayed gently, brushing against one another like whispers. As he walked, he heard a sound unlike any he had heard before. It was not laughter. It was not sorrow. It was something in between. He followed the sound until he reached a small clearing beside a stream. There, sitting on a smooth stone, was an old monk. His robe was simple. His posture was relaxed. His face was peaceful. And yet, tears traced slow lines down his cheeks. Haru hesitated, then spoke softly. "Master, why do you cry?" The monk opened his eyes slowly, as if waking from a deep dream. His gaze was gentle, like still water reflecting the sky. "I cry," the monk said, "because I see how complete everything already is." Haru felt a quiet shock in his chest. "How can tears come from completeness?" he asked. The monk smiled faintly. "And how can restlessness come from abundance?" he replied. Haru had no answer. He sat beside the monk, feeling the cool earth beneath him. The stream flowed without effort. The night breathed without intention. "Tell me," the monk said after a while, "when your body is thirsty, what do you do?" "I drink," Haru answered. "And when your heart feels thirsty," the monk continued, "what do you give it?" Haru was silent. He had spent years offering his heart success, recognition, possessions, and goals. Yet the thirst remained. "There are two kinds of hunger," the monk said softly. "One belongs to the body, and it can be satisfied. The other belongs to the mind, and the more you feed it, the larger it grows." As these words settled in the air, Haru felt something loosen inside him. It was not understanding. It was recognition. The monk picked up a small stone from the stream and placed it in Haru's palm. "Look," he said. Haru saw only an ordinary stone. Smooth, unremarkable. "Look again," the monk whispered. "But this time, do not try to name it. Do not try to judge it. Do not try to improve it." Haru gazed at the stone without effort. Slowly, something shifted. The stone no longer felt ordinary. It felt complete, silent, whole, exactly what it needed to be. Now, the monk said gently, "you are beginning to see yourself. Let your eyes soften now. Let your breath move naturally. In this moment, you are not lacking anything. You are not behind. You are not unfinished. The purpose of life," the monk continued, "is not to become something new. It is to remember what you have never stopped being." Haru felt the words not in his mind, but in his chest. They did not demand effort. They invited stillness. "Why then," Haru asked quietly, "do I feel such urgency to become more?" "Because no one ever told you that you were already enough," the monk replied. "So you learned to chase, to compare, to measure yourself against distant dreams." The monk pointed toward the stream. "Does the water struggle to flow? Does it worry about becoming something else? Does it suffer because it is not the ocean?" Haru shook his head. "It flows," the monk said, "because flowing is its nature." Silence returned. Not empty silence, but full silence. A silence that held everything without grasping anything. "The mind is like a bowl," the monk said. "When it is full of noise, nothing new can enter. When it is empty, it can receive the sky. As you rest now, notice the space between your thoughts. That space is not nothing. It is awareness. It is peace. It is home." Haru felt his breath slow. For the first time in many years, he was not trying to fix himself. He was simply being. "Look," the monk said, leading him deeper into the forest. They arrived at a large rock, split by time and weather. Light entered through its cracks, revealing crystals hidden within. "What do you see?" the monk asked. "A broken stone," Haru answered at first. "Look again," the monk said softly. Haru looked without judgment. The crack was no longer damage. It was an opening. It was the place where light entered. It was the reason beauty could be seen. "It is not broken," Haru whispered. "It is complete." The monk nodded. "So are you. The place in your heart that you tried to hide is not a flaw. It is the doorway through which awareness enters. You are not a being trying to become whole. You are wholeness learning how to experience itself. Let this understanding settle into your body now. You do not need to chase meaning. You do not need to earn worth. You do not need to prove your existence. You are already the answer you have been seeking. As the night deepens, allow your breathing to slow even more. Feel yourself sinking gently into rest, like a leaf floating towards still water. The journey does not lead somewhere else. It leads back to what has always been here. And as we continue, we will listen to another story, not from distant history, but from the quiet unfolding of awakening itself. For sometimes, the greatest transformation does not come from dramatic change, but from the simple moment when we finally stop trying to become someone else and allow ourselves to be. Rest now. There is nothing you need to do. There is nowhere you need to go. You are safe. You are whole. You are already home. The prince looked at the old man with quiet astonishment. His voice was barely more than a whisper. "Does this happen to everyone?" The charioteer nodded gently. "Yes, my lord. To everyone who walks long enough through this world." "And even to me?" the prince asked. "Yes," the charioteer replied softly. "Even to you." In that moment, something subtle opened inside the prince's mind. Not fear, not despair, but a clear, trembling awareness. For the first time, he understood that nothing in life remains unchanged. Not youth, not beauty, not strength. not even the carefully protected world that had surrounded him since birth. Let this realization touch your own awareness now, not as a heavy truth, but as a gentle awakening. Because when we see that nothing lasts forever, each breath becomes more precious, each moment more luminous, each quiet second more alive. The breath you take right now has never existed before, and it will never return in the same form again. This exact feeling of stillness, presence, and quiet clarity is unique in all of time. On another journey beyond the palace walls, the prince encountered a person weakened by illness. The body trembled. The eyes were clouded with pain. There was no escape, no beauty to soften the reality. The sight shook him deeply. It was as if another veil had been lifted from his eyes. On a third journey, he saw a body carried through the streets. Family members walked behind it, their faces wet with tears. The air itself seemed heavy with grief. In that moment, the prince understood something he had never been allowed to see. Life was not only gardens and music and silk curtains. Life also contained fragility, uncertainty, and endings. Slowly, the illusions that had shaped his childhood began to dissolve. He realized that the palace was not the world. It was a shelter built to keep the world away. And no shelter, no matter how beautiful, could protect him from the deeper rhythms of existence. Yet it was the fourth encounter that changed everything. On that journey, the prince saw a wandering monk. The man carried nothing except a simple robe and a small bowl. His feet were bare. His head was shaved. His posture was light, almost weightless. But what struck the prince most was not the monk's appearance. It was his eyes. In those eyes, the prince saw something he had never encountered before. Not excitement, not ambition, not satisfaction. He saw peace. Not the peace of having everything, but the peace of needing nothing. "Who is this man?" the prince asked quietly. "He is a seeker," the charioteer answered. "One who has left comfort behind to search for truth." That night, the prince stood alone on the palace balcony. Above him, the sky was vast and filled with stars. Below him, the palace slept in silence. A question that had been growing quietly in his heart now became impossible to ignore. If aging, illness, and death were inevitable, if beauty and pleasure could not protect anyone from these realities, then what was truly real? What could be trusted? What was the purpose of living? He looked back at his sleeping wife and child, at the golden walls that had been his entire universe. And in that quiet moment, he understood something with painful clarity. To find the answer, he would have to walk beyond everything he had ever known. This is the moment where ordinary curiosity becomes true awakening. The prince realized that he could not discover truth from within the very system that had hidden it from him. To see clearly, he would need to step outside his familiar world. As you listen now, feel your own willingness to release old ideas. You do not need to leave your life behind, but you can loosen your grip on the stories you have believed about it. You can step outside the palace of assumptions and see with new eyes. In the deepest hour of the night, when even the palace guards were lost in sleep, the prince quietly walked away. He exchanged his royal garments for simple clothes. He cut his long hair, letting it fall silently to the ground. He turned his back on power, comfort, and certainty to search for something that could not be bought or inherited. For many years he wandered. He studied with great teachers, learning methods to calm the mind and expand awareness. He practiced severe discipline, believing that by conquering the body, he could free the spirit. He ate almost nothing. He slept on the bare earth. He pushed himself beyond the limits of endurance. Yet, despite all his effort, the deepest questions remained unanswered. He discovered states of profound stillness, but when he returned to ordinary life, suffering was still present in the world. He disciplined his body until it became fragile and thin, but pain and confusion did not disappear. One day, exhausted from years of extreme practice, he collapsed beside a river. A young village girl found him there. She did not ask who he was. She did not ask what he believed. She simply offered him a bowl of warm rice milk. As he drank, something subtle shifted within him. He saw clearly that indulgence had not led to truth, and deprivation had not led to truth either. Perhaps the answer was not at either extreme. Perhaps wisdom lived in balance. This insight would later become the foundation of his path, the middle way. Not clinging to pleasure, not rejecting life, not forcing the body, not denying the heart. A way that honors both human experience and inner awareness. Let your own body discover this balance now. Not forcing relaxation, not resisting it either, not trying to sleep, not trying to stay awake. Simply allowing yourself to rest in the natural rhythm of being. Strengthened by kindness, the seeker walked toward a large tree near a quiet village. Something within him knew this was the place. This was the moment. He sat beneath the wide branches of the tree and made a simple vow in his heart. Even if the body weakens, even if time passes, he would not rise until he understood the end of suffering. As the sun set, he settled into stillness. What happened that night has been described in many ways, but its essence is simple. He looked directly into the nature of existence without turning away, without hiding behind comforting illusions. He saw that everything that arises also fades. Thoughts appear and disappear. Emotions rise and fall. Sensations come and go. Nothing remains fixed. He saw that suffering comes from trying to hold what cannot be held, from wishing reality to be different from what it is. And most importantly, he saw through the illusion of a separate self. The one who feared, desired, grasped, and resisted was not a solid entity, but a movement within awareness. The awareness itself was untouched. In that moment, he understood something timeless. The awareness that seeks is the same awareness that is sought. As dawn slowly illuminated the sky, the seeker had awakened, not to something new, but from a misunderstanding. He was no longer searching for completeness. He recognized that completeness had never left. Feel this recognition gently touching your own heart now. You are not broken. You are not unfinished. You are not on a journey to become someone else. You are the space in which all experience unfolds. You are the quiet presence that remains even when thoughts and emotions move. The awakening was not about gaining extraordinary powers. It was about seeing what had always been true. The one who sought was the very reality being sought. From that day onward, his relationship with life changed completely. He understood that pain is part of existence, but suffering is created by resistance. Birth, aging, illness, and death belong to life itself. But the struggle against these realities is optional. For many years, he shared this understanding with anyone who wished to listen. Not by giving them something new, but by helping them remember what they had never lost. His teaching was like a finger pointing toward the moon. Practices and words were the finger. but direct recognition was the moon. And now, as you rest here in silence, his journey becomes your own reflection. The purpose of life is not to escape difficulty, nor to chase endless pleasure. It is to awaken from the dream that you are separate from life itself. Let this truth settle gently within you. There is nothing you need to force, nothing you need to prove. Like water returning to stillness, your mind can soften naturally. You are not a seeker searching for truth. You are truth momentarily forgetting itself. And as your breath becomes slower, as your body becomes lighter, you may begin to feel what the awakened one felt beneath the tree. Not excitement, not achievement, but a quiet, spacious peace that has always been here. Rest now. The path is not ahead of you. It is unfolding within you. And in this unfolding, there is nothing missing, nothing to fix, nothing to become. You are already home. Let me share with you a quiet story about a tea master who learned to disappear. As your body softens further, allow these words to move through you like gentle warmth. Long ago, there lived a tea master named Aro. He was invited to perform a tea ceremony for a gathering of influential guests. For him, it was a rare honor, and he prepared with great intensity. For many days, he practiced every movement until it was flawless. He refined each gesture, each pause, each phrase, until everything felt precise and elegant. In his mind, he imagined a ceremony so perfect that no one could forget it. When the day arrived, the guests gathered in a quiet tea house. The air was still. The room was immaculate. Aro began. His movements were exact. His posture was controlled. His words were carefully chosen. Yet something invisible was missing. The atmosphere felt tight, as if the room were holding its breath. The guests shifted in silence. The ceremony was beautiful, but distant. Perfect, yet strangely lifeless. Halfway through, Aro felt a sudden clarity. In his effort to be extraordinary, he had lost the simplest thing of all. He had forgotten to be present. He was performing the ceremony rather than living it. He was chasing perfection instead of sharing tea. In that quiet instant, he made a gentle decision. He stopped trying to impress anyone. He stopped striving to be perfect. And he simply began to serve tea. His movements softened. His hands relaxed. His words arose naturally, without rehearsal. The change was immediate. The room warmed. The guests exhaled. What had felt like a performance slowly became a meeting of hearts. The ceremony was no longer flawless. Yet it became deeply real. Afterward, one guest approached him with wonder. "Master," he said softly, "I have witnessed many ceremonies, but never one like this. How did you create such quiet magic?" Aro smiled gently. "I did not create anything," he replied. "I only stopped interfering with what was already there." This is the essence of balance. Knowing when to act and when to allow. When to shape and when to surrender. When to strive and when to simply be. Nearby, the young apprentice Chen listened in silence. Something in his heart began to loosen. "But Master," he asked later, "how can I know when I am trying too hard? How do I find this balance?" Li Wei's teacher lifted one of Chen's carvings. It was a piece Chen had once considered ruined. Turning it slowly in the lamplight, Li Wei revealed details Chen had never noticed. Where the wood had cracked, delicate patterns had appeared. Where mistakes had occurred, hidden beauty had emerged. "What you call failure," Li Wei said softly, "is often the beginning of character." The wood is not resisting you, he continued. It is teaching you. When you fight it, it breaks. When you listen to it, it guides you. Your hands already know what to do when your mind learns to step aside. How do I quiet my mind? Chen asked. You do not silence it, Liwi replied. You give it something real to touch. Instead of worrying about the final result, feel this single movement of your hands. Instead of thinking about tomorrow, notice this moment. Instead of trying to become the greatest craftsman, be fully present with this piece of wood. This is how balance is lived. Not through dramatic changes, but through quiet attention to what is already here. As you rest now, allow this understanding to sink gently into your body. You do not need to transform your life overnight. You only need to arrive fully in this moment. This breath, this heartbeat, this slow drifting towards sleep. Chen began to practice what he had learned. He no longer worked endlessly. Instead, he worked with complete awareness. He no longer rushed through his creations. He touched each detail with care. Strangely, his work improved, and it took less effort than before. How can this be? He asked. When you stop fighting yourself, Liwi said, all your energy flows into creation rather than conflict. When you stop obsessing over results, you become free to enter the process. When you trust this moment, what once felt impossible becomes natural. This balance reaches far beyond craftsmanship. In work, it means commitment without attachment. In relationships, it means love without possession. In spiritual practice, it means sincerity without force. In daily life, it means being here instead of chasing elsewhere. There is another quiet story that reveals this truth. A meditation student once approached her teacher with frustration. For years I have practiced, she said, yet my mind is still restless. Should I meditate longer? Should I withdraw from the world? The teacher led her to the monastery garden. Two plants grew side by side. One was vibrant and full of life. The other was weak and struggling. What is the difference? The teacher asked. The student looked closely. The soil, the sun, the water are the same, she said. Look again, the teacher replied. Finally, she noticed it. Around the struggling plant, the soil was packed tightly, tended too often, pressed too firmly. Around the thriving plant, the earth was loose and open. Too much effort can harm growth, she whispered. Yes, the teacher said gently. Care is needed, but forcing is not. You do not need to stop practicing, he explained. You only need to learn the difference between nurturing and controlling. Water the seeds. Give them space. Trust their rhythm. Do not dig them up each day to check whether they have grown. Feel how this wisdom touches your own journey. You do not need to force peace. You do not need to manufacture awakening. Like the plant that grows best when given space, your inner clarity blossoms when you stop interfering with it. Balance is not a fixed point. It is a living movement, renewed in each moment. Sometimes it asks for effort, sometimes for rest, sometimes for yes, sometimes for no. Wisdom is not in following one rule, but in sensing what this moment truly requires. Liwi often told his students, a master carpenter does not use the same pressure for every piece of wood. Soft wood needs gentleness. Hard wood needs firmness. Skill is not in having one technique, but in feeling what each situation calls for. As you drift deeper into rest tonight, allow this sensitivity to awaken within you. Your body already knows when it needs rest. Your heart already knows when it needs to open. Your spirit already knows when to strive and when to release. Balance is not something you must invent. It is something you remember. There was once an old potter whose work was admired across the land. Students came expecting secret methods and rare tools. Instead, they found simplicity. "Master," one student asked, "how do you create such beautiful vessels?" The potter smiled. "I do not create them," he said quietly. "I remove what is not needed." He centered the clay and listened to its nature. He guided it gently without forcing. "The pot already exists within the clay," he explained. "My task is only to reveal it." This is the deepest teaching of balance. Your true nature already exists within you. Life is not about becoming someone new, but about uncovering what has always been present. Like the potter with clay, like the carpenter with wood, you can learn to move with your own nature instead of against it. The struggle ends when you stop trying to be someone else. Meaning appears when you begin to recognize who you already are. Let this recognition rest softly in your heart now. You are not a problem to solve. You are not a project to complete. You are a living work of art slowly revealing itself. And like all great art, this revelation happens not through force, but through gentle, patient unfolding. Rest in this understanding. You do not need to push. You do not need to hurry. Balance is not something you do. It is something you allow. As sleep slowly approaches, notice how naturally you are walking this path right now. Not forcing sleep, not resisting wakefulness. Simply allowing each moment to arrive and fade. This is the practice. This is the path. This is the quiet return to yourself. They move through their days while their minds wander elsewhere. They rinse their cups while replaying yesterday's regrets. They breathe in the present moment while chasing tomorrow in their thoughts. Rarely do they arrive fully in the place where their bodies already stand. Sense how this truth touches you now. Are you here completely, allowing your body to rest and your mind to soften? Or is a part of you still traveling through plans, memories, and expectations? There is no right or wrong in this noticing. Simply observe where your awareness gently rests. Riku continued speaking with quiet clarity. When I prepare tea, I am only preparing tea. When I bow, I am only bowing. When I sit in silence, I am only silence itself. When presence is complete, even the smallest act becomes sacred. The student listened carefully and asked, "How can such presence be cultivated?" Riku answered without hesitation, "Through practice, and through kindness toward yourself when you forget to practice." The mind wanders because wandering is its nature. Mindfulness is not the attempt to imprison the mind, but the art of noticing when it has wandered and guiding it back with gentleness. This gentleness is essential. Mindfulness is not a harsh discipline that forces change. It is the slow friendship you build with your own experience. When worry arises, you do not condemn yourself. You simply notice, worry is here, and return softly to this moment. When imagination carries you away, you do not reject it. You quietly recognize, fantasy is here, and come back to what is real and present. In this way, the inner battle ends. Instead of fighting your humanity, you learn to move with it wisely. You become like a patient gardener who understands that some days bring storms and some days bring sunlight, yet the garden is cared for in every season. As your body relaxes more deeply, Allow compassion for yourself to flow through your breath. You do not need to relax perfectly. You do not need to think correctly, feel correctly, or be correctly. You are allowed to rest imperfectly and still be at peace. Dogen once told his students, "The purpose of tending a garden is not to destroy wildness, but to create harmony between cultivation and nature." Some plants grow where you place them. Others grow where they choose. Wisdom is knowing which is which. Within your own mind, some thoughts respond to gentle guidance. Others rise and fall according to forces beyond control. Some emotions soften when touched by awareness. Others must move through you like passing storms. Mindfulness teaches you how to meet both kinds. Sometimes you apply gentle effort, returning your attention to the breath, choosing what nourishes rather than what harms. Other times you practice non-resistance, allowing difficult feelings to exist without struggle, letting restless thoughts tire themselves out naturally. This delicate balance between effort and allowing is the living expression of the middle way. You care for your mind like a garden, but you do not attempt to command it like a machine. There is an old story that reflects this wisdom. A monk once struggled with intense anger. Whenever he sat in meditation, flames of rage rose within him. He tried every method he knew, breathing techniques, visualizations, disciplines of concentration. Nothing seemed to work. The anger always returned. Eventually, he went to his teacher and bowed deeply. "Master," he said, "I have failed. I cannot control my mind. Anger appears again and again. Perhaps I am not meant for this path." The teacher listened silently, then led him to a field where farmers were burning the remains of harvested crops. Smoke drifted across the land, the air thick with the scent of fire. "What do you see?" the teacher asked. "I see destruction," the monk replied. "They are ruining the fields." "Look longer," the teacher said softly. As the monk watched, understanding slowly arose. The fire was not destroying the land. It was preparing the soil for new life. What appeared as ruin was actually renewal. The monk whispered, "Then my anger is not my enemy. It is clearing space for something new." "Yes," the teacher said. "Do not try to extinguish the fire. Let it burn, but do not feed it. Do not resist it and do not fuel it. Simply watch it do its work." This is the deeper practice of awareness, remaining present even with difficult experiences, without becoming trapped in stories about them. Anger does not arise because you are broken. Worry does not appear because you are failing. Sadness does not come as punishment. These are natural movements of the human heart. When held in spacious awareness, they become teachers rather than enemies. They reveal where you cling, where you fear, where you believe illusions. And in revealing these places, they quietly open doors to freedom. As you rest here now, let your thoughts be like clouds drifting across the sky of awareness. Let your emotions be like weather passing through the landscape of your heart. Let sensations be like waves rising and dissolving in the ocean of your being. You are not the clouds. You are not the weather. You are not the waves. You are the vast awareness in which all of them appear and fade. This awareness is never harmed by what passes through it. It is your original home, your natural state, your quiet center. This path is not about withdrawal from life. It is about discovering the freedom that comes when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours. Like a river flowing toward the sea, you move effortlessly not because you do not care, but because you trust the shape of the land. In the high mountains, There once lived a monk named Tenzin. He owned almost nothing, yet he carried a weight heavier than any traveler's pack. His burden was invisible, the memory of every mistake, the echo of every regret, the fear of never being enough. Each morning he woke with heaviness in his chest. Each night he lay down with the feeling that he had failed once more. One evening, an old wanderer arrived at the monastery. His face was lined with time, his eyes deep as quiet lakes. He carried only a worn walking stick. Tenzin bowed respectfully and said, "You must be tired from carrying your belongings so far." The wanderer smiled gently. "What belongings?" Tenzin pointed to the stick. "Your possessions, your supplies." The wanderer laughed softly. "This is not a possession. It is a companion. When I need it, it supports me. When I do not need it, I forget it is there. It carries no weight because I do not cling to it." Then the wanderer looked into Tenzin's eyes and said, "But tell me, how do you survive while carrying so much?" Tenzin felt his heart tremble. The wanderer saw what others could not, the mountain he carried within. "What is inside your invisible pack?" the wanderer asked. "Feel how this question echoes within you. What unseen burdens have you been carrying? What weights did you pick up long ago that were never meant to be yours?" That night, Tenzin sat beside the wanderer beneath the stars. Slowly, he began to unpack his invisible load, the harsh words spoken long ago, the promises broken, the moments of anger he judged himself for, the fear that he would never become wise enough, kind enough, pure enough. For each confession, the wanderer offered only silence and compassion. He did not correct. He did not fix. He simply listened with a presence vast enough to hold everything. When Tenzin finished, the wanderer picked up a stone from the ground. "If I asked you to carry this stone to the next village," he said, "would you do it?" "Yes," Tenzin replied. "And if I asked you to carry it for the rest of your life?" Tenzin hesitated. "That would be unbearable." "Then if I told you the stone was never yours to carry," the wanderer asked, "what would you do?" "I would put it down immediately." The wanderer nodded. "So why do you continue to carry stones that no one ever asked you to lift?" This is the beginning of true release, realizing that most of what we carry was never ours to begin with. We carry guilt that belongs to others. We hold responsibility for outcomes beyond our control. We cling to pain long after the wound has healed. As you rest now, imagine what it would feel like to set down the burden of perfection, to loosen the grip of past mistakes, to release tomorrow's worries from tonight. The wanderer taught Tenzin the art of open hands. He opened his palms toward the sky. "Open hands can give and receive freely," he said. "They hold what is needed and release what is not. Closed fists cannot give or receive. They cling even to what causes pain. Feel your own hands now. Let them soften. Let your fingers relax. Let your palms open naturally. In this simple gesture, your body remembers how to let go. The universe itself lives with open hands. The sun gives light without demand. The earth receives rain without grasping. Trees release leaves without sorrow. Your breath holds life for a moment, then releases it without hesitation." And as the night deepens, the wanderer gave Tenzin one final practice. "Each evening before sleep," he said softly, "empty your pockets." Tenzin asked, "How do I do that?" The wanderer answered, "Name what you are carrying. Thank it for trying to protect you, and gently set it down. Whisper gently within yourself, Thank you, worries of tomorrow, for trying to protect me. Tonight, I do not need to carry you. Say softly, thank you, regrets of yesterday, for reminding me to grow. I can learn without bringing you into my sleep. Feel this quiet ritual unfolding inside you now. What weight from today can you place down beside your bed? What fears about tomorrow can you entrust to the morning? What memories from the past can you release into the hands of compassion? Tenzin practiced this simple ritual every night. In silence, he opened his invisible pack and laid its contents before him. At first, the same worries returned again and again. But slowly, he began to see more clearly. He understood that loving his sister was natural, but carrying her anger was unnecessary suffering. He realized that learning from mistakes was wisdom, but punishing himself endlessly was not devotion. It was cruelty disguised as discipline. He saw that walking toward awakening was beautiful, but demanding enlightenment on his own schedule was simply another form of attachment. One evening he said to the wanderer, I think I am beginning to understand. Letting go does not mean I stop caring. It means I care without holding too tightly. The wanderer smiled gently. It is loving with open hands rather than clenched fists. It is being fully present with what is here, instead of fighting what was or chasing what might be. There is an old Zen story that carries this wisdom. Two monks were walking toward their monastery when they reached a river swollen by heavy rain. On the riverbank stood a young woman in delicate robes, unable to cross without ruining her clothes. Without hesitation, the older monk lifted her onto his back and carried her safely to the other side. She bowed in gratitude and continued on her way. The monks walked in silence for a long time, but the younger monk's mind grew restless. Finally, near the monastery gates, he could no longer contain himself. How could you touch that woman? He demanded. You know our vows forbid such contact. Why did you carry her? The older monk looked at him with quiet surprise. I put her down at the river long ago, he said calmly. Why are you still carrying her? This is the heart of letting go. Knowing when to set down what has already served its purpose. The older monk acted with compassion in the moment, then released the moment completely. The younger monk turned a single act of kindness into a burden he carried long after it had ended. Feel how this story touches your own life. How many moments are you still carrying long after they have passed? How many conversations are still echoing in your mind with people who are no longer there? How many problems are you still solving that were resolved days, months, or years ago? Letting go is also an art of timing. Like a farmer who knows when to plant and when to harvest, we can learn when to hold and when to release. Some things are meant to be carried for a while. Love for family, responsibility for actions, devotion to growth. Other things are meant to pass. Emotions, circumstances, thoughts, moods. Wisdom is learning the difference. Before departing, the wanderer shared one final teaching with Tenzin. The greatest freedom, he said softly, comes when you realize that you are not your experiences. You are the awareness in which experiences appear and disappear. Experiences come like guests entering a house. Some are welcome, some are difficult, but you are not the guests. You are the spacious house that can receive them all without being changed by any of them. Even painful guests? Tenzin asked. Even painful ones, the wanderer replied. Pain comes to teach healing. Fear comes to reveal courage. Anger comes to show what you truly value. Sadness comes to deepen your capacity for joy. When you stop fighting these visitors and begin listening to them, they no longer need to stay so long. This understanding changes everything. Difficult emotions are no longer enemies, but messengers. Pain is no longer something to escape, but something to move through with awareness. Life is no longer required to be comfortable in order for peace to exist. As you rest here now, practice being the vast awareness rather than the passing experiences within it. You are not your worries. You are the quiet space that notices worry. You are not your fatigue. You are the gentle rest that receives it. You are not your thoughts. You are the silence in which thoughts rise and fade. Letting go is, in truth, a return home. Home to the awareness that was never lost. Home to the peace that was never broken. Home to the love that never disappeared. When you recognize yourself as this presence, release becomes effortless. Not because you stop caring, but because you care from wholeness, not need. Not because you withdraw from life, but because you love without clinging. This is the deepest freedom, to participate fully in the dance of existence while knowing that you are both the dancer and the space in which the dance unfolds. Let this freedom settle into your body tonight. You are already free. You have always been free. The chains you believed in were woven from thoughts and beliefs, not from iron or stone. And thoughts, as you now see, are only visitors passing through the vast sky of being. Rest in this sky-like awareness. Let everything else drift like clouds. You are home. Far away, in the silent mountains of ancient China, there lived a hermit monk named Yunman. For 30 years, he had practiced alone in a cave carved into a cliff, reachable only by a narrow, dangerous path. He believed that isolation would bring awakening. Each dawn he rose before the sun, sitting motionless, watching his breath, observing his mind with unwavering discipline. Each night he studied sacred texts by candlelight, memorizing the words of masters who had walked the path before him. His life was pure, ordered, and disciplined. Yet something essential remained absent. He felt like a traveler dying of thirst who had spent decades analyzing the nature of water without ever taking a single drink. One winter morning, as snow fell silently outside his cave, a sound interrupted his meditation. It was the sound of crying. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. He had renounced the world precisely to avoid such distractions. But something in that fragile sound touched a place in his heart that years of meditation had not reached. He wrapped his robe around his shoulders and stepped into the snow. Following the sound down the mountain path, he found a young woman beside a frozen stream. Her clothes were thin, soaked with snow. Beside her lay an old man, unconscious and barely breathing. "My father collapsed," she said through tears. "We were lost in the storm. I don't know what to do." Yunman stood still. His mind thought of his meditation schedule, his disciplined routine, his teachings about detachment. Then he looked into her eyes. And in that moment, something dissolved. The boundary between his suffering and hers vanished. Her fear was not separate from his awareness. Her pain was not happening somewhere else. Without hesitation, he lifted the old man onto his back and began the difficult descent. They walked together through the storm in silence. Yet the presence between them felt more sacred than any meditation he had ever known. When they reached the village, he helped the old man into warmth and care. The daughter wept in gratitude, but Yunman felt no sense of heroism. His actions had felt as natural as breathing. As he climbed back toward his cave, his understanding shifted forever. For decades, he had tried to transcend suffering, to rise above the world, to find a consciousness untouched by pain. But in helping another human being, he discovered something deeper than transcendence. There was no separation. The suffering he sought to escape and the awareness that sought escape were not two different things. The awakening he had searched for was not somewhere else. It was the very consciousness capable of responding to suffering with love. That night, sitting again in his cave, Yunman understood why his practice had felt incomplete. He had used meditation to maintain distance from people, from life, from feeling. He had sought a private enlightenment, a personal liberation removed from the world. But true awakening, he realized, was not escape from the human condition. It was the recognition that there was no separate self to escape at all. From that day forward, his practice changed. He opened his cave to travelers in need. He responded to suffering directly, without theories or distance. He stopped chasing special states of consciousness and began recognizing the awareness already present in ordinary moments. Soon people climbed the mountain, not to hear teachings, but to sit quietly in the presence of someone who had discovered that enlightenment was not separate from compassion. One day a young monk asked him, "Master, I still feel separate from everything. How can I realize the unity the teachings describe?" Yunman handed him a cup of tea. "Who is asking this question?" he asked. "I am," the monk replied. "And who is listening to the answer?" "I am." "And who is breathing right now?" "I am." "Show me this I," Yunman said gently. The monk searched within himself. Thoughts appeared and disappeared. Sensations rose and faded. Emotions flowed like weather. But he could not find a solid self. "I cannot find it," he whispered. "Exactly," Yunman said softly. "The one who feels separate does not exist. There is only this seamless experience pretending to be divided. Now, as you rest in the quiet of this night, let this understanding settle gently within you. The feeling of separation, that you are a small self observing a world outside, is the deepest illusion of human experience. What if that separation never truly existed? What if the boundaries between self and world are like lines drawn on water, appearing real yet impossible to grasp? You have been searching for connection with something you were never separate from. You have been seeking unity while already living within it. The wave is not separate from the ocean. The cloud is not separate from the sky. The thought is not separate from the mind. And you are not separate from life itself. Rest in this recognition now. Your body is still. Your breath is gentle. Like a lake before dawn, each moment carries you deeper into a peace that has always been here. Without a single word, he measured out not one portion of rice, but 3. He wrapped them carefully, as if each grain carried a quiet dignity, and placed the bundle into the woman's basket. When she tried to protest, when she bowed again and explained that her coins were not enough, Taro gently shook his head. "The rice does not ask who has money and who does not," he said softly. "It only knows how to nourish." As the woman and her child left the shop, something unexpected awakened within Taro. There was no sharp ache of lost profit, no regret for his generosity. Instead, a warmth rose in his chest, spreading slowly with each breath. It felt as though he had been carrying a heavy stone for many years without knowing it was there, and in that moment, the stone had finally been set down. That night, after closing his shop, Taro sat alone among the quiet sacks of rice, trying to understand what had changed. He had given away nearly a day's earnings, yet he felt richer than he had in months. He had acted against his careful calculations, yet he felt more successful than any profitable deal had ever made him feel. In the weeks that followed, similar moments appeared again and again. A sick mother seeking food for her children. An old man whose savings had run dry. A young couple struggling to feed a newborn child. Each time, Taro felt the same quiet impulse rise within him, not from logic, not from strategy, but from a deeper recognition, as if their hunger was somehow not separate from his own capacity to help. Soon, word began to spread through the neighborhood. People spoke of the rice merchant who never turned away those in true need. Some competitors laughed at him, calling him naive and predicting his ruin. Others watched closely, waiting for his business to collapse so they could divide his customers among themselves. But something unexpected happened. As Taro's reputation for kindness grew, so did his business. People who could easily afford full price began choosing his shop, not only for the rice, but for the quiet atmosphere of sincerity that filled the small space. Customers lingered. They spoke to him about their worries, their hopes, their simple joys. His shop slowly transformed from a place of transaction into a place of connection. And Taro himself was changing. The anxious merchant who had once measured success only in coins began to discover another kind of wealth. Each act of generosity expanded his capacity to give. Each moment of caring revealed deeper layers of care within his heart. One evening, as he prepared to close his shop, a traveling monk arrived. The monk was old, his robe simple and carefully mended, his steps supported by a worn wooden staff. "I have heard stories about you," the monk said gently. "They say you give rice to those who cannot pay. Some call you holy. Others call you foolish. Which is it?" Taro reflected quietly. "I do not know about holiness or foolishness," he replied. "I only know that when I see hunger, something in me responds naturally, like water flowing downhill. I do not decide to be generous. The generosity simply happens." "And why do you think that is?" the monk asked. Taro looked at the neat rows of rice sacks in silence. "At first," he said slowly, "I thought I was helping others. But now I feel something different. When I see a hungry child, it is like seeing my own hunger reflected in a mirror. When I feed him, it feels as though I am feeding myself." The monk smiled, his eyes shining with quiet recognition. "You have discovered what many seekers search for across lifetimes," he said. "What is it?" Taro asked. "That compassion is not something you perform," the monk replied. "It is something you are. When the illusion of separation fades, caring for others becomes as natural as your right hand protecting your left." That night, the monk stayed in the small room above Taro's shop. Over a simple meal of rice and vegetables, he spoke of the nature of true compassion. "Most people believe compassion means helping others from a position of strength," he said. "They imagine distance between themselves and those they help. But real compassion is not born from difference. It arises from recognition. When you truly see that there is no fundamental separation between yourself and others, helping becomes as effortless as breathing." Taro listened carefully. "But how did this understanding come to me?" he asked. "I never studied spiritual teachings. I never practiced meditation." "The heart has its own way of awakening," the monk replied. sometimes through years of discipline, sometimes through a single moment of sincere care. Your shop became your monastery. Each hungry person became your teacher. Each act of giving became your meditation. That night, Taro understood something profound. His life had found meaning not through wealth or status, but through the recognition that all beings share the same essence. His rice shop was no longer just a business. It was the visible expression of an invisible truth. Years passed. Taro's reputation spread far beyond Edo. Other merchants began to imitate his way, discovering that business rooted in genuine care was not only more fulfilling, but also more sustainable. When Taro grew old and entrusted the shop to his son, his final words were not about profit or strategy. He said quietly, "Remember this. Every person who enters this shop is yourself in another form. Feed them as you would feed yourself. Care for them as you would care for your own heart. This is not charity. This is recognition." Now, as the night deepens around you, let this story settle gently within your own heart. Taro's transformation reveals a quiet truth about life. We often believe compassion is something we must cultivate, a virtue to develop, a discipline to practice. But true compassion is not something we create. It is something we remember. When we realize that there is no fundamental separation between ourselves and others, caring becomes as natural as the beating of the heart in your chest. You do not need to force yourself to be kind any more than you need to force yourself to feel pain when your own hand is wounded. This is why the ancient traditions speak of compassion not as a moral command, but as the natural expression of wisdom. When you truly see what you are, not a separate self struggling in an indifferent world, but awareness itself appearing in human form, then caring for others becomes consciousness caring for itself. The suffering you witness is not happening somewhere else. It arises within the same awareness that is reading these words. The joy you see in others is not foreign to you. It is your own joy reflected through different eyes. The love you offer is not something you possess and distribute. It is love recognizing itself wherever it appears. This understanding changes everything. Pain becomes an invitation to deeper awareness. Difficulty becomes a doorway to recognition. Compassion becomes not an effort, but a natural movement of being. When Taro saw the hungry child, he did not see an outsider in need. He saw his own nature appearing in a form that required nourishment. The generosity that flowed from him was not his generosity directed outward. It was life caring for itself through the temporary shape of his human existence. This may be the most liberating insight of all. You are not a lonely individual trying to manufacture compassion through willpower. You are compassion itself, momentarily experiencing the world through the unique lens of a single life. Feel this understanding gently settling in your chest. The awareness reading these words is not personal or private. It is the same awareness that has lived through countless forms, felt countless emotions, dreamed countless dreams. When this awareness meets suffering, it naturally responds with care. When it meets joy, it naturally celebrates. When it recognizes itself in another, it naturally loves. This love is not a passing emotion. It is the underlying fabric of existence, the force that holds stars in their paths, that guides rivers toward the sea, that binds every life to every other. You are not separate from this love. You are this love, momentarily focused through the delicate shape of your human experience. The purpose of life is not to become more loving, but to remember the love you already are. Not to develop compassion, but to stop obscuring the compassion that has always been your nature. Not to help others from above, but to serve from the recognition that there are no others, only life caring for itself in infinite forms. As sleep begins to embrace you, let this love flow through every cell of your body. You are not falling asleep alone. You are love itself, gently returning to the source from which it never departed. Tomorrow, when your eyes open, the world may look the same. But something within you will know a quiet truth. Every face you meet is your own face. Every heart you encounter is your own heart. Every life is your own life expressing itself in countless beautiful shapes. This is compassion. This is wisdom. This is the reason you came into being. Not to find love, but to remember that you are love itself, playing gently with your own infinite nature. At the foot of Mount Fuji, in a small and silent temple, there lived a monk named Jihu. For 40 years, he had searched for awakening. He had studied every sutra, mastered every technique, completed countless retreats and pilgrimages. His knowledge was vast. His concentration was admired by all. Yet the great realization continued to elude him. He had become the monastery scholar, the one younger monks sought for guidance. He could explain the deepest teachings with clarity and precision. But in his heart, he carried a quiet sorrow. He felt like a teacher of light who had never truly seen the sun. Each morning, before dawn, he sat in meditation, hoping that today would be the day the veil would finally lift. Each evening, he reviewed his practice with disappointment, wondering why liberation remained just beyond his reach. One autumn afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived at the temple gate. She was an old woman, carrying only a walking stick and a small bundle. Her clothes were simple, her hair untidy from long journeys. Yet there was something in her eyes that made even the abbot pause. "I have come to visit your temple," she said gently. "May I stay for a few days?" She was welcomed with quiet hospitality. From the first day, Jihu found himself strangely drawn to her presence. During meditation, while he struggled with ambition and doubt, she sat with a stillness that seemed to rise from the earth itself. During meals, her simple presence transformed silence into something luminous. But what struck Jihu most was how she moved through ordinary tasks. When she swept the courtyard, she swept completely, not rushing, not planning, not escaping the moment, only sweeping as if the act itself were sacred. When she walked to the hall, each step seemed deliberate, as though the ground were being gently honored. After several days, Jihu could no longer contain his curiosity. One evening, as she watched the sunset in the garden, he approached her respectfully. "Grandmother," he said softly, "I hope I am not disturbing you. I have watched how you move through this temple. There is something in your presence that I have not encountered in 40 years of monastic life. Are you a teacher? Have you studied with great masters?" The old woman looked at him with eyes full of quiet warmth. "Oh, child," she said with a gentle laugh, "I am only an old woman from the fields. I have never studied sacred texts," the old woman said softly. "I only know how to care for the soil, how to water vegetables in the morning, and how to hold my grandchildren when they fall asleep." Jihu smiled gently, yet his curiosity deepened. "But surely," he said, "you must have some hidden practice, some secret wisdom. The way you sit, the way you walk, the way you simply exist, it feels as though awakening is breathing through you." The woman did not answer immediately. She watched a small sparrow hopping among fallen leaves, searching patiently for tiny seeds. After a while, she turned to him. "Tell me, learned monk," she asked quietly, "what do you believe awakening looks like?" Jihu felt the familiar excitement of explanation rising within him. He spoke with confidence. Awakening is the realization of emptiness, the dissolution of separation between subject and object, the recognition of Buddha nature, the ending of suffering through the release of ignorance and desire. The woman smiled gently. "Those are very large words," she said, "for something very small." She pointed again toward the sparrow. "When you look at that little bird, do you think it is awakened?" Jihu reflected carefully. "In the ultimate sense," he replied, "all beings possess Buddha nature. But the sparrow lacks the awareness to recognize it." The woman interrupted him softly. "But does the sparrow suffer because it believes it is not awakened? Does it struggle to become spiritual? Does it worry that it is not advanced enough?" Jihu was silent. "Well, no," he admitted. "Then perhaps," the woman said quietly, "the sparrow is already living what you are searching for." That night, Jihu could not sleep. The old woman's words echoed through his mind like distant bells. Could it be that he had made awakening far more complicated than it needed to be? Could his striving itself be the very thing that kept him from seeing what was already present? The next morning, during meditation, he did something unusual. Instead of applying techniques, instead of monitoring progress, instead of chasing an imagined future state, he simply sat. He did not try to become anything. He did not try to reach anything. He allowed himself to be with what was already here, the quiet rhythm of breath, the feeling of his body touching the floor, the distant sounds of the temple waking to life. For the first time in many years, his meditation felt effortless. There was nothing to attain. Sitting itself felt complete. There was no one to become. Awareness itself felt whole. After meditation, Jihu found the old woman sweeping the courtyard. This time, he did not watch her as though she possessed a secret he lacked. He simply picked up another broom and began sweeping beside her. They worked in silence. There was no teacher and no student, no seeker and no guide. Only two human forms moving together, two expressions of the same quiet presence, participating in the same ordinary act. When they finished, the woman paused and looked at him. Her smile carried a warmth deeper than words. "There," she said gently, "now you are awake." Jihu looked around, expecting something dramatic to change. But everything looked the same. The temple was the same temple. The morning light was the same light. He was the same monk with the same face, the same memories, the same thoughts. "But nothing has changed," he said softly. "Exactly," the woman replied. "True awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about recognizing what you have always been. You did not achieve anything special. You simply stopped believing that you needed to." She gathered her few belongings and prepared to leave the mountain. Before departing, she turned back to him one last time. "The Buddha you were seeking was the one who was searching. The awakening you were chasing was the awareness that was doing the chasing. The peace you were practicing for was the consciousness that knew you were practicing. You have always been what you were looking for. You simply forgot to notice." After she left, Jihu continued his life exactly as before. He still rose before dawn. He still studied the sutras. He still guided younger monks. Yet everything felt different because nothing needed to change. Meditation became not a method for achieving awakening, but simply sitting completely. Study became not the pursuit of special knowledge, but a quiet appreciation of wisdom already present. Teaching became not the transmission of something he possessed, but the recognition of what was already alive in every student. Years later, when monks asked him about the moment he finally awakened, Jihu would smile gently. "There was no moment of achievement," he said. "There was only the moment I stopped believing that I was not awake." Now, as the night deepens around you, allow this story to touch something subtle within your own heart. For 40 years, Jihu searched for something extraordinary, a state that would lift him beyond ordinary life. What he discovered was that the extraordinary had been hidden inside the ordinary all along. We spend so much energy seeking special experiences, mystical states, moments of transcendence that will prove we are worthy of peace. But what if the awareness that seeks these experiences is already what we are looking for? The consciousness reading these words right now is not ordinary awareness hoping for spirituality. It is the same awareness that sages throughout time have pointed to as our deepest nature. You are not a human being who occasionally touches awakening. You are awakening itself, temporarily experiencing the adventure of being human. You are not consciousness trapped in a body trying to escape into freedom. You are consciousness playing gently with the idea of limitation. When this is understood, the spiritual path changes. There is no need to become someone else. There is no need to reach some distant state. You can simply relax into what you already are. Feel this recognition settling softly within you. You do not need to wait for a future moment of awakening. You do not need to collect more insights or practices. The awakening you seek is the very capacity to seek. The awareness you are searching for is the awareness that knows you are searching. This is why Zen masters say awakening is the most ordinary thing in the world. It is not reserved for advanced practitioners. It is what remains when seeking finally grows tired. The old woman sweeping the courtyard was not more awakened than Jihu. She had simply never believed she was asleep. She lived from the understanding that this moment, exactly as it is, lacks nothing. This breath, this heartbeat, this quiet sense of being alive. You do not need to understand this intellectually. Understanding is just another passing experience. You do not need to feel peaceful or blissful. Feelings are clouds moving through the sky of awareness. You do not need mystical visions. Experiences come and go, but the awareness in which they appear remains. You are not the waves. You are the ocean. You are not the story. You are the space in which the story unfolds. We are not here to become awakened. We are here as awakening, playing the gentle game of forgetting and remembering. As sleep draws you deeper into rest, know this quietly. You are not falling asleep as a separate being. You are truth itself, returning to the silent source from which all forms arise. Your life is not a problem to solve. It is a song existence is singing to itself. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to achieve, no one else to become. The search ends not because something was found, but because it was realized that nothing was ever lost. You are home. You have always been home. And in a quiet village by the sea, there lived an old fisherman named Akira. From dawn to dusk, his life unfolded on the water. Each morning he sailed beyond the harbor. Each evening he returned with his catch and a heart full of gratitude. Unlike other fishermen, he did not speak of the sea as something separate from himself. He spoke of it as though it were an old friend he had never left. "How do you always know where the fish are?" the younger fisherman asked. Akira smiled toward the horizon. "I do not find the fish," he said softly. "The sea shows me where they are." "And how does the sea speak to you?" "The same way it speaks to you," Akira replied. "Through the wind on your face, the movement of the current, the color of the morning light. The sea is always speaking. Most people are simply too busy listening to their own thoughts." Feel how this wisdom touches your own life. Life is always guiding you, but often the mind is too loud to hear. One day, a teacher from a mountain monastery came to the village. "I have come to learn from you," he said to Akira. "Our monks study scriptures and meditate for hours, yet many still feel restless. But you, a simple fisherman, seem to have found what they seek. What is your secret?" Akira laughed softly, like waves brushing against stones. "There is no secret," he said. "I simply go fishing." "But surely," the teacher insisted, "there must be some special practice." Akira tied his nets calmly. "Yes," he said, "I practice being where I am. When I mend nets completely. When I watch the horizon, I watch it completely. When I listen to the sea, I listen completely. That is all. And that is everything." The teacher stayed for 3 days. At first, he felt disappointed. There were no grand teachings, only ordinary work and simple rhythms. But on the third morning, as he watched the sun rise over the ocean, feeling the breeze and hearing the water, something shifted within him. This moment was complete. Nothing needed to be added. The boat became a temple. The sea became a teacher. The sunrise became scripture written in light. Tears filled his eyes. "I have been searching for the divine in books," he whispered, not realizing it has been looking at me through every moment of life. Akira nodded gently. "How can you leave yourself to find yourself?" he asked. "And as the night grows deeper around you, let this understanding rest quietly in your heart. You have been searching for meaning, for peace, for fulfillment. But the awareness that searches is already what you seek. As you rest here now, allow yourself to sense something wider than this body, something deeper than thoughts, something quieter than emotion. You are not only the feelings moving through this human form. You are the awareness in which those feelings appear. You are not only the thoughts that rise and fade. You are the open sky in which those thoughts drift. You are not only the sensations of breath and heartbeat. You are the silent space that allows every sensation to exist." In that quiet understanding, the teacher returned to his monastery. Nothing outwardly changed, yet everything within him had softened. He did not abandon meditation. He simply stopped using it as an escape. Meditation became a way of meeting life directly, without resistance, without ambition. Study was no longer the accumulation of ideas. It became a gentle listening to wisdom already present. Service was no longer a duty or obligation. It became the natural movement of love. The monks noticed the change. "What did you learn from the fisherman?" they asked. The teacher smiled. "I learned that I do not need to become awakened," he said quietly. "I only need to stop pretending that I am not." And in that moment, the search ended. Not because something extraordinary was achieved, but because something ordinary was remembered. The peace you have been seeking is the peace you already are. The love you have been searching for is the love looking through your eyes. The home you have been trying to reach is the place where you have always stood. There is an old Zen story that expresses this truth with gentle clarity. An aging master lay quietly on his bed, surrounded by students who loved him deeply. Their hearts were heavy, knowing his time in this form was coming to an end. "Master," one student whispered through tears, "where will you go when you leave this world? How will we find you again?" The master opened his eyes slowly, and in them there was no fear, only boundless tenderness. "Where could I go?" he asked softly. "There is nowhere that is not here. How could you lose me? There is no one who is not you." The students bowed their heads in silence. "What is the final teaching you wish to leave us?" another asked. The master listened for a long moment, not to the students, but to the sound of rain touching the roof above them. Then he spoke his last words. "For countless years, the rain has fallen on this roof. But tonight," he said gently, "the roof is grateful." With that, his breath became still, and he passed peacefully. The students remained in silence, feeling something beyond sorrow. They understood that life had always been sacred, that existence had always been complete, that every moment had always been a quiet miracle. They had simply forgotten to notice. And perhaps this is the true purpose of life. Not to escape the ordinary, but to awaken within it. Not to wait for some distant awakening, but to recognize the miracle of this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. You do not need to earn peace. You do not need to deserve happiness. You do not need to become someone else. Right now, as you rest here, you are already touching what you have always been searching for. The awareness listening to these words is not small or personal or limited. It is the same awareness that has looked through the eyes of sages and fishermen, children and elders, across centuries of existence. It is the same consciousness that watches stars being born, seasons unfolding, and love moving silently between hearts. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are spirit itself, temporarily experiencing the shape of a human life. You are not a wave separate from the ocean. You are the ocean, gently exploring the form of a wave. Feel this truth settling softly within your body. Let it loosen any sense of inadequacy. Let it dissolve any feeling that you must be somewhere else, or become someone else. Let it bring you home to the simple recognition of what you have always been. As sleep begins to wrap you in its quiet embrace, understand something subtle and beautiful. You are not falling asleep. You are awakening to the dreams that consciousness weaves for its own gentle play. Tomorrow, when your eyes open, the world may look the same, but something within you will feel different. You will remember that you are not a visitor passing through life. You are life itself, temporarily visiting this form, this name, this story. The purpose of life is not to achieve, not to conquer, not to become. The purpose of life is simply to be present with whatever arises, to be fully yourself without apology. To be awake to the miracle that existence is happening at all. You are that miracle. You have always been that miracle. You will always be that miracle. Rest in this knowing. Let everything else fade into the background of awareness. The search is over. The journey is complete. You have come home. And in the later years of his life, there lived a quiet Zen master named Mon. He was not famous for his teachings, nor celebrated for his words. He was known only for the stillness that surrounded him, like a calm lake reflecting the sky. People traveled great distances not to hear him speak, but simply to sit in his presence. In his youth, Mon had been a fear seeker. He had studied with countless teachers, practiced countless disciplines, and searched endlessly for awakening. For 20 years, he pushed his body beyond comfort, his mind beyond limits, his spirit beyond exhaustion. Yet with every step forward, awakening seemed to move further away. Slowly, a quiet weariness settled into his heart. Not the fatigue of the body, but the deeper tiredness of endless striving. On his 50th birthday, alone in a small mountain hermitage, he finally spoke the truth he had avoided for years. "Enough," he whispered to the silent room. He looked around at his simple life, the wooden walls, the flickering lamp, the sound of wind moving through trees. "If this moment is not already complete," he said softly, "then perfection has no meaning." And in that moment, nothing changed, and everything changed. The world remained the same, but the seeker disappeared. The struggle fell away like a cloak he had worn too long. In its place, there was a lightness he had never known. That night, Mon slept deeply, not from exhaustion, but from release. And when he woke, he was no longer searching. He was simply here. Years later, students came to his hermitage, hoping to learn the secret of his realization. But they found only an ordinary old man, tending flowers, preparing tea, watching clouds drift across the sky. When asked about awakening, he would smile and point to a flower. "This morning it was a bud," he said softly. "This evening it is blooming. Tomorrow it will fade." When asked about practice, he would ask gently, "Are you breathing? Are you aware that you are breathing? Then you are already practicing." One evening, a young monk asked him, "Master, are you awakened?" Mon watched the sky for a long time before answering. "Who would be awakened?" he asked quietly. "And who would know?" "I searched for awakening for many years," he continued. "Now I no longer search, and it is everywhere." And as the stars filled the night sky, Mon sat quietly, resting in the ordinary perfection of existence. Now, beloved listener, feel how this story completes the journey of this night. You have explored the deepest questions of being and discovered something simple. The purpose of life is not to find something missing. It is to recognize what has never been absent. You are not a human being seeking spirit. You are spirit, gently exploring the form of a human life. There is nothing left to achieve, nothing left to become. Let your body soften completely now, like a leaf settling on the forest floor. Let your breath become slow and quiet. Let your mind release all effort. This is the deepest rest. You are not returning to a place you left. You are resting in what you have always been. You are truth itself, gently returning to the silent source of all forms. Rest now. All seeking dissolves. All becoming fades. What remains is presence, wholeness, and quiet love. You are home. You have always been home. Sleep gently. Sleep peacefully. All is well.